Kelly,
Here.
Bishop, Brancatelli, Cleveland, Conwell, Griffin,
Here.
Hairston,
Here.
Johnson,
Here.
Bashir Jones, Joe Jones, Casey,
Present.
McCormick,
Present.
Mooney,
Here.
Polincic, Santana,
Present.
Life,
Present.
Zone.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. This committee of the whole is being held during the COVID-19 emergency declaration and is being conducted as a virtual meeting in accordance with Ohio's open meeting laws as amended by, as amended by Sub-House Bill 197. In compliance with the charter and the rules of council, a copy of all legislation to be heard was furnished previous to the council meeting to every council members through their council email. It is hereby acknowledged without objection that all members of council have received this legislation. Further, council members must be visibly present for all votes. If you are not present, your vote will not be counted. I should almost have that memorized by now, but I don't. All right, so we're going to proceed as we normally do on Wednesdays with the committee of the whole, and the council meeting will follow after a 10-minute break between. For housekeeping purposes and for the agenda, for directors that are watching, we're going to begin with Public Works, Department of Finance, Human Resources, Capital Projects, and council resolutions. And before I start, I'm going to request that ordinance number 655, 2020 is our annual allocation to the Cleveland Film Commission. It was not back from administrative review. It still isn't, and therefore it is not on your calendars or the emails that went out. I would like to walk on ordinance number 655, 2020, unless there's objections from members of the body. So if I
Objection.
any objection? Raise your hand if you have an objection. Okay, so hearing none, we will hear this this piece for Cleveland Film Commission, ordinance number 655, 2020 during committee of the whole. Okay, so with that, I'm going to begin with Public Works. And we have ordinance number 49820, Councilmember Kelly, an emergency ordinance confirming the authority of the Cleveland Botanical Garden to charge admission fees and parking fees and direct improvements on property leased or subleased to the Cleveland Botanical Garden, and authorizing Director of Public Works to enter into a fourth supplemental indenture of the lease agreement. This has been approved by Planning, Public Works, Finance. Is Director Cox on? Is there anybody? Director Dumas? Chief Dumas? If you could unmute for a sec, please. Director, you with us?
Okay,
Very
am
good.
I unmuted now?
You are now unmuted.
Okay, great, okay.
We were talking about ordinance number 49820. That's the Botanical Gardens piece
Right.
that has been through planning and has been approved. It's a small change to existing authority. But do you have any comments on 49820?
No, other than the administration would request the council adopt same. Other than that, I don't have any additional comment.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have further comments on ordinance number 49820? Councilman Matt Zone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, when I read the ordinance, received it, have we previously charged for parking, and have we allowed that in the past?
I don't know.
This, if I may, Mr. President?
Councilman?
Yeah, well, we did ask that question at the DPS committee hearing yesterday. And yes, they had been charging for that surface lot and parking at that location.
And
No,
then
we're reading
just
the
my
text of the ordinance, it's confirming that authority.
Just, Mr. Chairman, my next follow-up would be, and maybe Councilman Brancatelli knows, is it the same rate that is currently in place?
That we did not have the answer to that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, that I don't know that. I will send someone to find that out quickly before this meeting is over.
Great. Okay. Yeah, if we get that before the council meeting itself, that'd be great.
Okay.
Any questions on 49820?
Andre.
Hearing none, 49820 stands approved. Moving now to Department of Finance. And there are two ordinances of Department of Finance. We have ordinance number 64720, Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Finance on behalf of Cleveland Municipal Court to apply for and accept a grant from the Alcohol, Drug Addiction, and Mental Health Services Board of Cuyahoga County for the 2020-2021 Specialized Docket Program, and authorizing director to enter into one or more contracts with various agencies, entities, or individuals to implement.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can hear the noise, but it's not me. It is a piece that the court gets annually, and I believe that Bonnie Horton is on the Zoom for the court. And Bonnie, would you like to make any comments around the piece of legislation?
Yes, so this is a grant that we receive, a pass-through from the state of Ohio that goes to our local Adams board. And it is $180,000. We receive it each year for the specialized dockets. There is no match required by the city. And the program year is the state calendar, the state fiscal year. And like I said, we accept it every single year. It is to assist with the specialized drug dockets that we have for the city to provide supplemental assistance to reduce recidivism.
Great. And Bonnie, how long have we had this grant?
My understanding is, so I've been on board 2 years. I want to say we've gotten it for at least 4 to 5 years.
Great, great. And if I heard you correctly, and I'm reading this correctly, this is basically apply and accept legislation. The money is passed through. It does not come at or there's no expense to the city of Cleveland, and it's tremendously helpful to the court.
Correct, correct.
Thank you. Questions on 64720? Hearing none, ordinance number 64720 stands approved. Bonnie, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. That was quick and easy for me.
That's how we are. Yes.
Thank you.
Moving to ordinance number 65820. Ordinance number 65820 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing payment of membership dues of the city of Cleveland in the Northeast Ohio Area Coordinating Agency for fiscal year 2021. Director Dumas, Chief Dumas.
Mr. Chair, members of council, of course, this is our annual membership dues to NOACA, and this year for fiscal 2021 will be $68,559. Council did appropriate those funds for payment of that membership, and of course, it's our citywide membership.
Thank you. And are those membership dues consistent with our annual dues? Is that our usual rate?
It's the usual computation,
Okay.
but I think they're a little higher than they were last year.
Okay.
But I believe it's based on the size of the entity and that kind of thing. So it's the normal methodology, but I
Okay.
believe the 68,000 is a little higher than it was in previous years.
Great. Okay. Questions, comments on 65820, our NOACA dues? Seeing no hands, ordinance number 65820 stands approved. Chief, do you want me to do the HR pieces, or do you want to wait until Director West can join us?
Director West isn't on.
I'm here, Director.
Oh, great. Okay. Okay.
Oh.
Gina can assist.
Excellent. Okay, so there's 3 pieces that are being requested to be heard under suspension. The first is ordinance number 68620 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance to amend section 50 of ordinance number 32315 passed March 30th, 2015 as amended, related to compensation for various classifications. This one deals with the MCEO bargaining unit. So Gina?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of council. This is just an amendment to section 50. to correct the maximum rates by 5 cents.
I was looking at this. Is that all there is to it? It literally
That's
changed
all
it
there is.
by a nickel for Group A, Group B, and Master Mechanic. That's all there is to it?
That's all it is to it.
Okay. Does anybody have any comments about this nickel raise? On ordinance number 68620? Seeing no hands, hearing no comments, ordinance number 686, 2020 will be considered by the full council later this morning. Ordinance number 68920 by Councilmember Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance approving the collective bargaining agreement with the Cleveland Association of Rescue Employees, CARE, Local 1975, and to amend section 22 of ordinance number 32315 passed March 30th, 2015, as amended related to compensation for various classifications. This is our EMS workers. Gina?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is the tentative agreement for the EMS workers. This is for the contract year of 2016 through 19, and also 2019 through 2021. They have agreed to the pattern wages for 2016 through 19 of 022, and the 2019 through 21 is pattern wages of 2, 2, and 2. The union ratified this agreement on June 19th, and there are about 272 employees in this union.
Okay. And in addition, there are some changes to the pay bands for dispatchers, for technicians. That's all in our packet, and the paramedics all have unlike the 5 cents that we just saw, these are decent pay band changes.
Yes.
That seemed fair. So I guess my question is, normally we see 3-year contracts or 3-year agreements that go back. So this 6 years, that just, we haven't been able to come to terms with them on those, on 16 through 18?
That's correct. It went through conciliation, and there just became an agreement this year.
Okay. And I'm assuming that there'll be some good chunks of retro pay that have to go to people based on the fact that we're going back to 2017.
Yeah, it'd be a retroactive pay.
For 17, 18, 19, and some of 20.
That's correct.
Right. Okay, questions, comments on ordinance number 68920? Councilman Matt Zone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know the membership of CARE are thankful that we're ultimately hearing this legislation today. It was a hard, long negotiation. As my colleagues know, council, we don't negotiate agreements. There have been multiple outreach from CARE over those previous 6 years, contacting members of council. And I have copied you on some of my responses to them. I am thankful that the administration and the membership have come to an agreement. As you said correctly, Mr. Chairman, they've been without a contract since 2016. And so this approves the previous contract as well as the new contract moving forward. And hopefully moving forward, these contracts could be approved on a triennial basis moving forward. I'm fully supportive of this legislation.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Further questions, comments on 68920? Seeing no hands, hearing no comments, ordinance number 68920 will be considered by the full council later this morning. Ordinance number 69020. Councilmember Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance approving the collective bargaining agreement with International Local 100, Ask Me Ohio, Council 8, AFL-CIO, and to amend section 8 of ordinance number 32315 passed March 30th, 2015, as amended, relating to compensation for various classifications. Gina?
Mr. Chairman, this is for, as you said, Ask Me Local 100, and this is to approve the tentative agreement. The members of this union approved their agreement on June 12th of 2020. There are about 1,202 employees in this union. They have agreed to pattern wages of 2, 2, and 2 for 2019 through 2021.
Great.
And also, we have brought all the minimums up to $15.
Right. And looking at the changes in the pay band, there's nothing particularly jumps out. There's no great leaps that need explanation in the ones that I'm looking at, that I've looked at. So with that said, are there questions, comments on ordinance number 69020? Seeing no hands, hearing no questions, ordinance number 69020 stands approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. That's all you had, right?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move now to capital projects. Is Director Sprons with us? I see. There we go. All right.
Yeah, I'm here, Council President.
Okay. All right. So we have 6 pieces, 4 ordinances, 2 resolutions to consider. I will begin with ordinance number 49920. Council members Cleveland, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance to amend the title and section 18 of ordinance number 58817 passed June 5th, 2017, relating to giving consent to the Director of Transportation of the State of Ohio to remove and replace the existing East 75th Street Bridge, to supplement the ordinance by adding new section 7A, 7B, 7C, 7D, and 17A, to add authority to apply for and accept additional funding and to cause payment to the State of Ohio for the city's share of the improvement. Director?
Yes, Council President, members of the Finance Committee. Yeah, this project involves removing and replacing the existing bridge over Norfolk Southern Railroad and Greater Cleveland RTA rail lines built in 1931. This is an ODOT administered project. The superstructure and substructure are in critical condition, as they are generally appraised by the City of Cleveland and Cuyahoga County Engineers Office. The project estimate for this is approximately $7.2 million. The city share, which will come out of road and bridge bonds, is about $1.5 million. This is design will be complete in March of 2021. It'll be bid and award in July of 2021, and construction will be complete in August of 2023. This is in Councilwoman Cleveland's ward. So we ask for your review and approval.
Thank you, Director. And this has had 2 previous hearings. The Committee on Municipal Services and Properties and Development Planning Sustainability. Councilman Johnson, do you have any further questions, comments on 49920? I'll take your silence.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, no, I'm fine with it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilman Brancatelli, this was heard by Committee on Development Planning Sustainability.
Thoroughly reviewed and approved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And this is falls in Ward 5, local councilwoman Phyllis Cleveland. Are you supportive of ordinance number 49920?
Yes, Mr. President, I am, and I ask my colleagues to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any further questions on ordinance number 49920?
Mr. President,
Yes, please.
it's not about this specific ordinance, but I do have just a question and comment about the longevity of the process to get projects done when I'm able to ask or pose that question.
Okay, if we could do the legislation first, and then we'll hold that question till the end.
Thank you.
Of this section of this section here. Councilman Joe Jones on ordinance number 499.
Thank you, Mr. President. How long has this been worked on? When did we start working on this project and brought it to where it's at now? Was it 2017 when we started on?
Through the chair to Councilman, I don't have an exact start date of when we started this project. It has been a long time to get the funding together, and then the timing of it also had to coincide with work being done on Opportunity Corridor. So it's been years. We could take that as a question and get back to you on that.
Right. That's fine. I got a project in my neighborhood. We started one back 20 years ago, and that's Lee Road. And I don't know where we are with that now, but I've been asking if we can get Lee Road done for the longest. we started at Lee and Miles, and, you know, I see a lot of these projects just flying across the table. And I want to make sure that we get started on this one. It would mean so much to the citizens of the southeast section of the city of Cleveland to see that road taken care of. Is that a possibility?
And if you could answer this, Director, then I'd like to push any miscellaneous, either for a brief section after this, or we can take it offline.
I just want to.
I'm asking you to answer your question.
Right. Thank you.
Director?
Yeah, through the council president to Councilman, yes, we're aware of Lee Road. We've spoken to you about it in the past on several occasions. We're looking at Lee Road and its pavement condition rate. And then once it gets into our ability to start working on it, we will do so and start to get funding put together for it. That will take some time. I would imagine there'll be several partners have to be funding in. It'll be no issue one, which is Ohio, DOPWIC, ODOT, and so forth. So that'll all get planned out as we move forward.
Okay, thank you, Chairman, to the director.
If there are no further questions about ordinance number 49920, ordinance number 49920 stands approved. Ordinance number 520, council members Griffin, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly, by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply to the District 1 Public Works Integrating Committee for state funding for the rehabilitation of a portion of Buckeye Road, and to accept such funding, to apply for and accept grants from various entities for the improvement, authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into contracts and agreements to design and construct the improvements and other agreements, and authorizing the Commissioner of Purchase and Supplies to acquire, accept, and record right-of-way for right-of-way purposes, real property and easements necessary to make this improvement. Director?
Yes, Council President, members of the Finance Committee, Buckeye Road and Shaker Boulevard, from Shaker Boulevard to South Boulevard will be rehabilitated. It's approximately 1.4 miles. The improvements include the recycled pavement rehabilitation, complete and green streets, and multimodal improvements include new sidewalks, curbs, ADA compliant curb ramps, and landings, new driveway aprons, roadway stormwater drainage systems, new water lines, new traffic signals, and all streetscaping. This is a Cleveland administered construction project. Buckeye Transportation for Livable Communities TLCI study will be completed in 2020, and the TLCI and the complete and green streets and multimodal related recommendations will be implemented as part of the project. That may include some striped bike lanes, shared use striping for lanes, and enhanced crosswalks, enhanced transit waiting environments. This is a $5.8 million project, of which the city of Cleveland's share is $2.1 million. The bid and awards expected to be in October of 2021, and construction complete is expected to be in September of 2022. This is in Councilman Johnson and Griffin's wards.
Thank you, Director. And this ordinance has had 2 previous hearings and it's been recommended for approval by the Committee on Municipal Services and Properties and Committee on Development, Planning, Sustainability. Councilman Ken Johnson, anything further on ordinance number 520?
No, Mr. Chairman, I obviously want to pass this.
Yeah. Thank you. Councilman Brancatelli?
Thoroughly reviewed and approved. Look for recommendation.
Thank you. And then local council person, Councilman Johnson, is Councilman Blaine Griffin.
Totally in support of this, Mr. Chair. Glad that we're getting this done. Long overdue.
Great, thank you. Questions on ordinance number 520, Councilman Joe Jones?
Mr. President, to my colleagues, Mr. Johnson and Mr. Griffin, congratulations. This would be a great improvement to the area. How long have we been working to try to get this done, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President?
I don't know. Director, do you know the answer to that?
No, I don't have it readily available in front of me. We could look back at our records and find out when this project initially started. It's been done in phases over time. The entire corridor has. So we can take.
So what phase is this, Mr. President, to the director?
This will be our last phase for this work.
And when was the first phase started, Mr. Chairman, to the director?
Again, through the chair to the council, I don't have that information in front of me. We can take that as a question and get.
Okay,
Okay,
Mr. Chair, on that point,
yes, please.
on that point, I will tell Councilman Jones that we have been trying to work on this for more than 2 years. You know, when this was first proposed, it is a state road, so we have been trying to advocate for it for quite some time. So similar to other projects, we've been, this was actually brought to our attention a couple years ago. We've been advocating for it since then.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President, to my colleague for letting me know that it's been 2 years. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, ordinance number 500, 2020 stands approved. Ordinance number 501, 2020. Council members Bishop, Cleveland, Griffin, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. Emergency ordinance giving consent of the city of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the state of Ohio for improving Union Avenue from Broadway Avenue to Kinsman Road to apply for and accept any grants or gifts from any public entity authorizing directive capital projects to enter into any relative agreements and causing payments of the city's share to the state for the cost of the improvement. Director?
Yes, Council President. The city has arranged for the preparation of construction plans and specification, including engineering reports for this 3.2 mile long project. ODOT will arrange for the sale award to the lowest bidder and provide construction supervision and administration for the improvements. The complete and green streets and multimodal improvements include recycled asphalt milling, pavement base repair, asphalt resurfacing, installation of ADA compliant ramps, minor curb repairs, walk and drive replacements, and new pavement markings and signage. A safety grant was filed with ODOT in March of 2019, and a notice of award is pending for this grant, which if received, would give us the ability to include striped bike lanes and shared lane markings. The cost estimate for this project is approximately $6.4 million. The Cleveland's local share funding is $1,276,000. Design began in October 2019. We look forward to having construction completed in 2020 by October 2021. This is in council members Bishop, Johnson, Cleveland, Griffins, and Brancatelli's wards.
Thank you, Director. And this ordinance has also had 2 prior hearings recommended for passage by Committee on Municipal Services and Properties, as well as Committee on Development, Planning, and Sustainability. Councilman Ken Johnson, anything further on 50120?
Yeah, no, I have nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Brancatelli, anything further on 50120?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a wonderful Zoom public meeting with this project with a lot of great input. Manager Swatowski did get back to us on some of the curb cuts that are being removed and a little bit of detail. We'd just like to respectfully ask, once we get this approved, as Director Sprance noted, they'll have the opportunity for bike lanes and sharrows that we sit down and go over where those are located. I know Councilman Griffin talked about some businesses. We talked about some other intersections. So we want to make sure we can circle back before construction starts.
Thank you. And as far as local representation, Councilman Kevin Bishop, any comments or support of ordinance number 50120?
Yes, Mr. President, I'm fully supportive of this.
Great. Thank you. Councilwoman Cleveland?
Fully support.
Thank you. And questions, comments from colleagues? Councilman Joe Jones, Ward 1.
I just want to congratulate my colleagues. They're getting a nice road work done in their neighborhoods, and to see several of those council members serving and getting that is certainly a delight. That's it, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilman. If there's nothing further, then ordinance number 501 2020 stands approved. Ordinance number 502 2020 Councilmembers McCormick, Johnson, Brancatelli, and Kelly by departmental request. An emergency ordinance giving consent to the city of Cleveland to the Director of Transportation of the state of Ohio for resurfacing a portion of West 14th Street to apply for and accept any gifts or grants from any public or private entity, authorizing the Director of Capital Projects to enter into any relative agreements and causing payment to the city share, and causing payment of the city share to the state of Ohio for the improvement. Director?
Yes, Council President. Yeah, the limits of work here are from Quigley to Starkweather Avenue on West 14th. The city has arranged for the preparation of construction plans and specifications, including engineering reports. ODOT will arrange the project sale award to the lowest responsible bidder and provide construction supervision and administration of the improvements. The complete and Green Street and multimodal improvements include recycled asphalt milling, pavement base repair, asphalt resurfacing, and installation of ADA compliant ramps. The project length is approximately 0.6 miles. The existing pavement markings and signage, which also includes striped bike lanes, will be enhanced and maintained. The cost estimate for this project is about $1.8 million. And the city share for the work is $361,720 of road and bridge bonds. The designs began in 2019, July 2019, and construction is scheduled to be complete in September of 2021. This work will be taking place in Councilman McCormick's and Brancatelli's wards.
Thank you. And like the pieces before the legislation before this, this has been heard and recommended for passage by the Committee on Municipal Service and Properties, as well as Committee on Development, Planning, and Sustainability. Councilman Ken Johnson, anything further on 50220?
No, I don't have anything further, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Brancatelli, anything further on ordinance number 50220?
Thoroughly reviewed, approved. Just one quick question. This is scheduled for construction in 2021, Director?
Through the chair to the Councilman Brancatelli, yeah, construction is scheduled to begin in April of 2021 and be complete in September of 2021.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And now to our local council person for this project, Councilman Kerry McCormick.
No further comment outside of our discussion at DPS. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's, I don't see any hands raised. If there's nothing further, ordinance number 50220 stands approved. And at this moment, I would like to just take a minute, point of personal privilege. I just want to allow Bashir Jones as the director a question on process. And if we can answer this, Director Sprines, as efficiently as possible. And if we need to take this offline, we'll do that. But Councilman Bashir Jones.
Well, I'm sure. Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sure we're going to have to take this offline. And honestly, I'm wondering, is there some type of hearing that can happen as you, and I'm hoping that also John James and others can begin to research from idea to structure being built, the process. I just thought about it all day yesterday, Mr. President, that we have a simple park that will take 3 years to complete. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. And it's something wrong with the process. It's something wrong with it. And we are a city that we're looking at maybe 400,000 people, where you have our neighbor in Columbus who are reaching over 1 million people, and their processes are much more quicker to get things done than what's happening here. There's a flaw in the process. And some of my colleagues have some great poker faces and maybe not as frustrated, or maybe you're even more frustrated, or maybe just numb to it. I don't know. But this is a major problem. And I don't understand why it takes so long. And why is it that some areas are getting done and they're getting done quicker, and in some areas are not? So what it seems as if, and it's not like an east side, west side thing. It's not that. This is we are a whole city. So that's not the point that I'm making. But it just concerns me, kind of like the lethargic responses to why are things taking so long. So, Mr. President, just to be quite honest with you, some people have the ability to be lethargic right? But for us who are running for office and who are constantly trying to show our residents that we are not lethargic and that we are serious about wanting progress in our neighborhood, me personally, I can't afford to wait 10 years to get something simple as a park done. I can't wait that long. I don't want to wait that long. And it just the responses to it is kind of like get over it. And I can't get over it because this is a major reason I believe that there are people who don't want to do business in the city of Cleveland. If I go to as I'm looking on my phone and I go to Columbus website, they're able to get permits right online. They're able to go right online, get permits done, get things done, move fairly quickly. But here in our city, it moves extremely too slow. And not only does it move slow, but at the same time, the responses to why is it moving slow is kind of like, well, this is how it's been, kind of like just get over it. So what I'm asking, Mr. President, is I really want to understand the process from idea, and this is not something I want to do like offline. Like I'm calling that there needs to be some type of hearing that we can in front of everyone say this is how the process goes, and then allow us to criticize and say, well, why is it going that slow? Does it have to go that slow? Does it have to go that slow? So what I'm asking for, Mr. President, is that we be able to have a public conversation about our processes. And I'm going to say this one more time. I have a project in my ward, Signet Real Estate. They built and invested $30 million in Ward 7. Okay, this is for my colleagues and I hope I can get your attention on this. Okay, $30 million project. This group came in and invested $30 million. Okay, a beautiful building that I would urge you all to drive past and take a look at. And they said we in respect for the community, we're going to give over $800,000 to build a park and build a right-of-way, basically, where those who live in this building are able to walk safely to their destination. Okay, that was 2 years ago. This group gave an $800,000 check to the city. So it wasn't like the city had to give any money. And still, I'm being told, hopefully, and I appreciate you, Mr. President, for pushing it, but still, it's a possibility that it still won't be built until next year. So now you are affecting businesses who have already invested in the neighborhood. And also, when it comes to the opinion of the neighborhood, it's looking in a raggedy type of way.
Right.
So what I'm saying, Mr. President, thank you for allowing me to respect it, but I'm very troubled and upset about it, because how do I bring new investments into my neighborhood when I have to tell them that it's going to take 3 years or 4 years in order for something very simple to happen?
Yeah, I think I understand your point pretty clearly. What I would, for purpose of moving forward, I hear you loud and clear in terms of, and we worked on trying to push some of these things forward, but and there is frustration over the timeline with many people in the body, many of our colleagues. What I would recommend is that we hold a separate hearing on this. We had a series of hearings where we talked about the permit process, and it actually came along a good way. It seems appropriate that we have a check-in with that, and then we add the capital process to just let us know what is the process and how does it move along. So what I'd like to do is schedule that for a separate hearing, and you have my commitment that either through myself or Councilman Johnson that we'll get on the calendar in short order. And I would just offer anybody from the administration, just in fairness, an opportunity to respond, but I don't want to go back and forth point by point today. But just in fairness, I would like to let Councilman Jones know you are heard loud and clear. There will be a follow-up hearing on this topic. But I don't want to not give the administration a chance to respond if there's anything that they want to respond to at this point. So Director, Chief, is there any response you want to have prior to the hearing that will be scheduled in the future?
Well, I will speak on behalf of the administration that, of course, I hear Councilman Jones loud and clear. I'm not familiar with this specific park. And that, of course, the administration is willing to sit with him and in any committee hearing and speak about process, because there is a great deal of process that evolves around even when someone is willing to pay for a project. And so we're willing to have that conversation, and we'll make sure that everyone at the hearing are individuals who can answer these questions.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on that point.
Councilman Kelly?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I also would commit, Councilman Jones, we will have a hearing through DPS about building and housing, and an issue that you had championed, Mr. President, was online permitting. And since COVID, we have been doing online permitting. It's a pretty fluid process, and we can have the director, Donald, and her team, who did a great job of getting that system up and running, to show how City of Cleveland's doing online permitting now. So it's been working quite well, and I've used it myself. So we'll make sure we have a hearing on that as well.
Thank you. Councilman Joe Jones. So, Councilman, if you'd push the unmute button, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also, just want to, while we're talking about hearings, I've requested starting day one, my actual streets and their cost, and a breakdown on how that process works in the streets department. And I would like to understand, that entire process, how it works, the cost, all of the minutiae in terms of the details. I've received and been blessed, and I appreciate the administration in terms of supporting our bad street. City Council, in addition to the streets that were being recommended to be resurfaced. 80% of that map was red. I was able to look at the streets and select the streets I wanted. And then all of a sudden, 2 years, being on the council, coming into my third year this year, I get a new map, and then all of a sudden, streets have changed. So it went from being F grade streets to, C grade streets. And I just couldn't, believe what I was looking at, because I had already went through my entire neighborhood.
Councilman,
and
interrupt for a quick
my map was changed.
I'll make sure you get all the information on your streets, but this is a topic that is near and dear to all of us. And I'm happy to schedule some hearing to go over where we are with our residential side street program. I think that it's tremendously important to all of us. So that's something we can schedule as well.
Right. And then that'd be great. And then also about in terms of process and procedure, we just, looked at $20 million going through a number of neighborhoods for road infrastructure repair and capital improvements. And those roads were not on the original plans. A lot of those that were scheduled and slated to get done. Okay. So some of them came out of nowhere. And so that was the reason, President, I was asking, what is the process? Because I've been sitting here at the table for just one road. I've been asking for one road. And so, I just need some assistance in my neighborhood. However, my colleagues sweet moved it along. I want to sweet move my ward along to Ward 1. I'm here to fight for my residents and I want in my community. And I don't think that that's too hard to ask for. Two important things: how that program that we got with the streets are working in terms of the minutiae of things, and the quality that's being used on our streets. Because I have that just got done, and they're falling all apart.
Thank you.
Just complete. So, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, so will we be having a hearing on that too? How do we get our going?
I'm always happy to talk about streets.
Right. So again, I'm not, trying to haggle here, but I just want to know what the process is, be clear about it, as well as be able to participate equally as all of my other colleagues are locking into it and taking care of it. And so, Mr. Chairman, I'm here lobbying on behalf of those citizens that I represent in the southeast side of the city of Cleveland. Thank you.
Councilman Matzone?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. My comments directed to Director Sprons and his team. I'm still waiting for a written response for West 65th. We met in person 2 months ago. I've sent a series of email communication. The last one I sent was on August 18th. It's August 26th. I have 3 unresponded emails regarding this project with the solution and a path forward. So I hate doing this way. This is not how I operate. But I felt necessary to let those listening on this call that I need a response to West 65th.
Through the chair to Councilman Zone, yeah, we will get that response to you hopefully this week.
Thank you.
One prepared.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further, I want to move to our next legislative matter. So thank you all. This is the piece at the beginning of the meeting. I had asked if there's any objection to hearing ordinance number 65520. Nobody had any objection, and this is something that we've been doing each year since at least I've been here, related to the Cleveland Film Commission. So it is ordinance number 65520. Council members Brancatelli and Kelly by departmental request, an emergency ordinance authorizing Director of Economic Development to enter into a grant agreement with the Greater Cleveland Media Development Corporation, doing business as Greater Cleveland Film Commission or its designee, to assist with general operating expenses of the organization. This is an expense of $250,000, which is consistent with last year's request, as well as what was in the budget that we passed in April. So I would ask Councilman Brancatelli, somewhat unfair because this just came, to ask you to comment on this, but it would normally be routed to development planning sustainability. But I know you're familiar with the Film Commission, and I just wanted to seek your input. And again, I apologize about the late nature, but like I said, we didn't get it back, and I know that it's time sensitive to them.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and certainly support this legislation. It's been an amazing relationship with the Film Commission and their impact that they've had in our city. And I think this is definitely worth renewing our ongoing support for. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Further questions, comments? I have Councilman Blaine Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree that this is a very necessary investment. I think that we've had a great partnership. I would, however, like to explore how we can expand that partnership. We have a lot of cultural gyms and theaters throughout Cleveland that I believe can partner with the film festival to do a lot of the training of the grips, lighting, and some of the backstage production as well. And I would like to see at some time how the Film Commission is working with a Cleveland Public Theater, the Playhouse Square Theater, Karamu House, all of these different public theaters that we have, in order to see how they are benefiting off of this investment we're making in the Film Commission, or if we might need to look at investing in some of those cultural assets as well, because they're really working on workforce and training just as much as the Film Commission. So just something I want us to think about as we move forward, and something I'm interested in seeing how we can really leverage our partnership with the Film Commission to really be inclusive with all of those different theaters as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Joe Jones. You're muted. You could unmute.
I'm sorry, Mr. President. I'm looking for the piece for the Film Commission. I don't see it. What number was that again?
It's 65520. It will not be in the packet. As I stated when we started, this was an administrative review and we didn't get it back, but it was time sensitive to them. So they asked if it has been introduced 2 weeks ago. So I was expecting it to be back and ready today, but it wasn't. So I asked if there's any objection to walking it on. This is a walk-on piece for the Cleveland Film Commission. But it's,
And how much is it for,
it was
Mr.
just sent
President?
out- It was just sent out via email. I just got word on that.
Okay.
It's $250,000, which is consistent with last year's contract. And it was in our budget that we passed in April. Councilman
Wow.
Kevin, wait.
Well, Mr. President, thank you. Like all our lights have went out now. We had an explosion over here. So, okay, well, Mr. President, does the Film Commission, do they have any kind of presentation that they have that they can send over to us on what they're doing?
Yes, they do. And part of this was just a timing issue. In terms of normally we would get it back for administrative review. I would contact them, we would queue it up, we would have a presentation. But because of the timeliness, it was not there, but I would be happy to bring them in to talk to us. And they
Okay,
would
thank
come in and talk to us.
you, Mr.
I have a, President.
On that point, Councilman, or a separate line of questioning?
Well, yeah, on that point, I'm same thing with what Councilman Griffin talked about. There's a whole industry that can be created here in the city of Cleveland, but I'm just not sure that I've seen anything coming from the Cleveland Film Commission. So I would like to just be able to talk with them a little bit and ask some questions about what they're doing, what they plan to do. So
Sure.
that wouldn't be something that I would want to support until I'm able to do that.
Great. And I can say that is a goal, that is a value of theirs as well. I will make sure that the new director was not new anymore, but Evan Miller comes before us to testify. And in a perfect world, he would be here. And they come every year. Every year that this piece comes up, they do attend in person and give a presentation. But I'll make sure that presentation gets to everybody. Councilman Kevin Conwell.
All right, Mr. President.
Yep.
All right, I didn't vote for the Film Commission last year or the year before that. Here's my reason why. With the last director, he didn't include any African Americans in his administration at all. And he needs to, or this new guy, we need to have a conversation with him because you got to include us into it, Mr. President. I mean, this is my residence, and the residents on the northeast side, dollars going into this also, but you don't include us into the administration, African Americans, and that's why I voted against it. You have to tell me a reason why I should vote for it, and I'll listen to you because I'm going to vote against it again.
What I can say to you, Councilman, is I don't know those numbers right now, but I will have that for you, and you can make a decision by the time we vote as a full council.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I see Director Eversole joined us. Did you want to add anything to 65520, Director? Film Commission piece?
Oh, yeah. Hi, apologies for running in here. All I would add is that, we have made a ton of progress in developing.
Director, if you can hear me, I've muted you. I don't know if you've got two screens up, but you are, there's a lot of echoing and a lot of feedback. So I don't know if you have two cameras or if you've tuned in twice because this is so interesting, but we couldn't hear anything you were saying. Let's try again.
All right, is that better?
Nah. Do you have another screen open?
I think it's a reenactment of the movie The Alien.
I think.
All right, let me try this.
Good.
Good.
Is this?
Yes.
Is this better?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. The point I would make only is that we've really made a lot of progress in developing the film industry in Cleveland, and that as we look towards the future, and there's going to be a lot of changes and shifts in the way that people approach things, and as they think about how they're going to restart again in 2021 and 2022. And so this is really important to invest in maintaining that infrastructure so that we can be in the best position to take advantage of new opportunities that may emerge.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no hands, ordinance number 65520 stands approved, and I will get to Councilman Conwell before we meet as a committee, and I'll answer that question for you, Councilman. I'll email out to everybody. Okay, now we're going to move to council resolutions. The first is Resolution 62520, council members Mooney and Conwell, an emergency resolution urging the Cleveland Metropolitan School District to change the name of Louis Agassiz Elementary School to Louis Stokes Elementary School. Councilman Mooney.
Yes, I mean, briefly, I wanted to thank Councilman Conwell for bringing this to my attention. I never knew much about Louis Agassiz until he brought it to my attention. And, you know, what I found was he was really a horrible person. He was a geologist with some contributions in that area, but he also was a pseudoscientist, an unrepentant racist over his lifetime, who wrote many papers and books saying horrible things. And his pseudoscience, he argued with Darwin and other scientists. He believed that Blacks and Indians and Hispanics were not just separate races, but inferior species not related to white people. His pseudoscience was quoted by Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party on racial purity as a basis for limiting the Jews in World War II. His pseudoscience was quoted by the Klan. I mean, I won't go more than that, but it's not just one or two acts. It's a lifetime of unrepentant racism. At a time when those views were not widely thought of, and he got into many debates. And so once I found that out, I couldn't good conscience. This wasn't a man. I don't know why the school was ever named after him. He's a Swiss-born geologist who spent most of his life spouting horrible racist ideas in papers.
And what better name to replace with than Louis Stokes? So I want to commend you for that.
And I did just mention the school district, that was a suggestion, and I'd be happy to have that. But it's more important to remove Louis Agassiz. And this is something that's not just happened here, but across the country, where they've had buildings named after him.
Great, thank you. Co-sponsor Kevin Conwell, did you want to comment on Resolution 62520?
I just want to thank the council member for reading up on him, and let's say he has narrated everything I was going to say, so I'm not going to re-say it. And so we asked for council support moving this over to the school district. And we've already reached out to the school district, the councilman and I. So we get your support. We'll be very, very happy. Thank you very much.
Much appreciated.
Mr. President, I want to say I really appreciate Councilman Mooney, and I really appreciate Councilman Conwell, man, and your effort to really look at these schools that have been named by some very troubled people. I appreciate you doing that, and I would urge for every member, you know, we need to look at these school names, and as I said, and recreation centers for that matter, and rename them to heroes. You know, whether they're Black, whether they are Hispanic, whether they're Irish or Italian, whoever they are, you know, we should be putting, you know, heroes' names on there, despite what their culture and religion is. So I would love to be a co-sponsor on that, if that's okay. And I would also like to, anytime that you do that effort, you know, consider me to be a co-sponsor on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. And then I just also want to give kudos to my colleagues, Brian Mooney and Kevin Conwell. Mr. President, I ask that you also put me on as a co-sponsor. No better fitting than it is to acknowledge a great American hero as Congressman Louis Stokes. I was fortunate to be a member of his 21st Congressional District Caucus, young people, and he mentored me. And he brought hundreds of millions of dollars, close to $1 billion to the city of Cleveland over his lifetime in terms of supporting all sorts of efforts in the city of Cleveland. So it's so befitting to honor him in such a way. And I just want to take this opportunity also to thank my colleague, Brian Mooney, for being such a great human being and recognizing that, as well as working with his colleague, Kevin Conwell, to remove him, that name off that school building and to rename it after someone who has had a powerful, profound impact in our community. So with that being said, I really appreciate it, and it certainly is an honor. And thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman?
Yeah, just briefly, when I was doing this too, I was looking up, we all know Lou Stokes, but I did find out one thing I never knew about Lou Stokes, and that he was not the first rock star of his family, that his cousin was actually Rick James, and I never knew that. And he delivered the eulogy. So as cool as he was, to find out he's related to Rick James made it even cooler. Thank you.
That fact is super freaky.
Freaky. Councilman Kerry McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support this legislation as well, and I agree with everything that has been said so far. Yeah, I'd be curious, and thank you, Councilman Mooney, for that thorough description. I'd be curious to know, and I don't know if this is something our research staff could do, why this building was ever named after this man. I mean, I think that changing the name, absolutely, all of that is important, but who did this? I mean, who did this? When did this happen? I mean, honestly, I think it's important to know that as well. So I don't know if that's something that our archivists or our research staff could look into, but I mean, this is pretty heinous, and I'd be interested to know who did this and why it happened. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. If there's nothing further, is any objection? Could you raise your hand if you object to being a sponsor to this resolution? We'll do all council members unless anybody objects. Or if you want to tell me privately, I see no hands, I see no objection. So resolution 62520 as amended by adding sponsors stands approved. Thank you to the sponsors for doing this hard work. We've got a few more council resolutions to go through. The first one is resolution 68420, Councilmember Kelly. An emergency resolution designating Jennifer Henner O'Leary and Rachel Nigro Scalish individually as designees of Cleveland City Council for purpose of attending public records law training programs required under Ohio Revised Code. As you know, there's a requirement to attend the records law, and they would be our designee. Does anybody object to resolution 68420?
Move approval.
Resolution 68420 will be considered by the full council. Resolution 68320, Councilmember Kelly, an emergency resolution fixing the date of the next regular council. Any objection? This will be considered by the full council. Resolution 68020. An emergency ordinance by council members Brancatelli, Cleveland, and Santana. Emergency resolution commemorating the 100th anniversary of the passage and ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, providing for women's suffrage. Let me just hear from the sponsors really quick. I don't believe there will be much objection, but Councilman Brancatelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to be joined with Councilwoman Cleveland and Councilman Santana on recognizing this anniversary. Truly an important day and a cornerstone of our democracy is our right to vote. And welcome my colleagues to join us on recognizing this day and this anniversary. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Cleveland?
Yes. Okay. I'm sorry, I didn't.
We're just talking about the resolution commemorating the 19th Amendment's passage and ratification that you're a sponsor.
Yeah, ask all my colleagues to support this, the anniversary of this momentous event in the history of our country. And thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Santana?
Okay. Hello, everyone and my colleagues. It is an honor to actually sponsor this 19th Amendment. Because of this great event, I am able to be a councilwoman, right? And so because of the women that come out and vote, us women have the opportunity to be at the table and voice, all the concerns and challenges and be a voice for all other women with all the struggles that are happening out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Madzone?
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had the good honor of serving with some very fierce women.
That's
on my
right.
time on City Council. And so I appreciate and respect all of you. I would love to be added as a co-sponsor if the sponsors would allow. And I just want to take this personal point of privilege and reflect and recognize my mother, who was the first female majority whip of Cleveland City Council. 200 years had passed our city before a woman achieved that status. So I'm appreciative every day when I get the wise counsel and advice from our majority leader, Phyllis Cleveland, and would love to be added as a co-sponsor.
Thank you, Councilman. Can you raise your hand if there's an objection? I see some people wanting to be on as well. Does anybody object to being added as a sponsor? So if we could add all council members to resolution 68020, and it will be considered by the full council later this morning. We have resolution 68120 by council members Kelly and Joe Jones, an emergency resolution strongly opposing the federal government's attempt to rush the 2020 census count, demanding that the federal government return to the revised extended schedule to ensure an accurate count, and urging the Jackson administration to sign on to the California lawsuit challenging the decision to shorten the time frame for completing the census. We all know all too well this is a census year. We all know that cities and urban areas, there's historic undercounts that happen in regular times. This seems to be the Trump administration's decision to not extend the census. And by the way, the Census Bureau had on its website a timeline that would extend the collection of the census and all the procedural steps that they had to take. The Trump administration required that people get pulled from or stop counting after September 30th. And I think that this will result in an undercount, a severe undercount in the city of Cleveland, which is directly tied to resources. And I think that there's a lawsuit that's going on in California, and a number of counties and cities have joined that, asking for an accurate count. I spoke with the mayor about this, and he had no objection to us asking the law director to look at joining that lawsuit. So I do have one co-sponsor so far. That's Councilman Joe Jones, if he's on. Councilman Jones? Do you want to comment on this, Joe? Councilman?
Yes,
I can put you in the back of the list.
I had a problem with being disconnected, but I'm honored to join you, Mr. President, in this piece due to the fact that what we're experiencing is unprecedented in the history of humanity to have a pandemic, the coronavirus. And Mr. President, one of the things that we're having in our community right now is people don't want to come to the door because they don't want to catch this pandemic. And it has contributed to one of the reasons why we're undercounted right now. And so, Mr. President, I understand the politics of this president and his politics and how he has guided this country has been unprecedented. And what he said has been, and what he has done in this country to divide our country is unprecedented. And so, Mr. President, I think that, we should even move as far as to look at ways and means legally within all of this to join other cities across the country to sue so that we can have more time to count our residents. Its impact would have a massive negative impact on our community if we don't get all of our count out. So, Mr. President, I just, again, I urge my colleagues to join us.
This is a very serious situation. We will be faced with, as a city and as a region, losing a lot of money and resources that go to help our people and people in our community who has been engaged with a number of programs coming from the federal government. So, Mr. President, we have to start looking at ways and means to get some kind of legal remedy here. And so that would be my suggestion. And so I'm honored, Mr. President, to join you and my colleagues in fighting on this initiative for our citizens and for our community.
Great. Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Mike Polensek.
Can you hear me?
Yes. No, actually, you muted. After you said that, you went mute. Could
Okay,
you,
can you hear me now, Mr. Chairman, my colleagues? Okay. Having been through 4 redistrictings, I can give a historical perspective. There's no doubt, and first of all, I want to state I support the resolution, and would ask to be joined as well as a co-sponsor. Mr. Chairman, I came in this body, there were 33 council members. There are 17 today as a result of massive undercounts over the past 40 years in the city of Cleveland. There's no doubt this is attributed to the situation we find ourselves in today. We have lost congressional representation in Washington, which has affected our state and our city and our region. So as we move into this final period within the United States Census, I find it amazing that so many of our residents still do not understand the severity of the problem. And I want to ask this, and I'm going to make this request through you, Mr. Chairman. The last newsletter that went out, the citywide newsletter, in my opinion, which I didn't have, I'm sure the majority of us didn't proof it or didn't have an opportunity. But I think we need to get out another newsletter like now, just specifically talking about city services, the effects of COVID-19, but also half that publication, at least half, if not more, should be about the census and the actual dollar amounts, how this affects people. People, I find, because I talk to so many people every day. In fact, unlike most of my colleagues, I'm getting more emails and phone calls than ever before on a whole wide range of issues. They still don't understand the financial impact on the city. They don't understand the impact on the county. And ultimately representation. We will lose representation with the 40% percentage response that we're seeing on the east side, the average response. We're going to take a beating in this city, a beating, a royal beating, and it's not only going to affect this legislative body in a very negative way, but it's going to affect our citizens' ability to get projects and services in their community. People have to understand that census is critical for the amount of federal dollars that come to this city based on, again, population and based on need. So I would urge the leadership to let's get out another newsletter now to talk specifically, expand about how the census affects everyone's daily lives in this city. I can't stress enough how critical this is. I'm amazed at people who have told me they haven't returned their forms. And I asked them why, because they don't believe it's important, or somehow they think that the government is going to learn something about them. Oh, I don't know what I filled out my census form. I'm looking at the form. What's in the form that scares people? There's nothing in that form that should scare anyone. I mean, I returned mine. My son who lives up the street from me, he returned his. My other son who lives around the corner, he returned his. I mean, I don't get it. But there's a lot of folks, as we know, especially on the east side, who don't understand the severity of this. So again, I want to strongly recommend that we get something out as soon as we can that really tells people how critical this is. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To that point, Mr. President.
Councilman Bashir Jones?
It's very cultural, Councilman Polensek. It's very cultural. Particularly on the east side, Black people have not trusted the government for good reasons. And what happens is, because as I went through the census, it is very, you're asking a lot of questions about who lives with you, right? Who's the people, what's their names, what's their ages, so forth and so on. And when you have people that have been affected, as you know better than any of us, have been affected by housing or not being able to have housing. You have people who, maybe have 10 people to a house that only should have 5. And as a fear, they don't want to put that information down because they fear that they may either lose their house or may lose benefits. So I don't know where this message has come from, but it's definitely not of just this generation. This goes back my grandparents and great grandparents. The same type of concern or fear has been traversing through every generation. So Mr. President, I want to just follow up with Councilman Polenzek, is that we need to put it out there. I just put out a commercial just letting people know, hey, if you do the census, you're not going to get arrested for child support. You're not going to get arrested for this. You're not going to get arrested for that. You can't lose housing. This is anonymous. We have to really pound that pavement and give that message. So I just wanted to concur with Councilman Polenzek. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, on that point really quick, and to my colleague as well, Polenzek, also undocumented, right? So ICE has already been in our neighborhood. I have a lot of undocumented families here, so it's been very challenging to have them fill out the census. So I would also encourage for some Spanish communication to also be mailed out.
Okay. And, understanding the reluctance to give information, and also a lot of people just don't like filling out forms and returning them. But as far as your information, what I tell people when I'm asking people to fill out the census or doing that is whenever you download an app, you put your personal information more at risk. Whenever you give access to your photos, to your contacts, to your, all those things that the apps ask you to get. So it's less intrusive than these phones that we have. But it's as we've stated, it's so important. So if there's no further questions, resolution 68120 will be considered by the full council.
Mr. Chair, can I be added as a sponsor?
Yes, please. Is there any objection to all council being added? Please raise your hand if you object. Okay, if we could add all council members as sponsors to resolution 68120, please. The next resolutions all have to do with our friends in Columbus and how they generally view Cleveland. I'm going to begin with resolution 68220, Councilmember Slife, Brancatelli, McCormick, an emergency resolution opposing Senate Bill 352 to modify municipal income tax employer withholding rules for COVID-19 related work from home employees. If those of you who have heard, this has been introduced, and it's basically a way to take money from the host cities based with the argument that they're working from home. So I want to hear from I'll let the sponsors explain it better than I will. Councilman Charles Slife.
Sure, thank you, Mr. President, and build off of what you said. When work from home began, there were some questions initially of if people should now be paying their income tax where they were working or now from their city of residence because they're working from home. And the state stepped in, made it pretty clear that we would continue paying income tax as we have been. A few weeks ago, a state senator in Hudson introduced a bill in the Senate, Bill 352, with the goal of really negating that and having, if someone had been working in an office in Cleveland but is now working remote from their suburb, that their income tax would be remitted to the suburb instead of to the city. And I think we all appreciate how detrimental such a system would be for our city and for our budget. It would lead to incredibly difficult decisions on cuts across all of our various departments because our tax structure and the tax structure of many other cities is really built around the fact that we're these large employment centers. And I think what frustrates me the most is there really seems to be this perception among some people in our region that, the problems of Cleveland or the challenges of Cleveland are out of sight, out of mind, and people are happy to live in these idyllic suburbs. When the truth is that we as Cleveland are the center of this regional economy. We are the powerhouse, and the stability and strength of Cleveland is to the benefit of the entire region, whether or not you live in the city. I think it's really cutting off one's nose to spite the face. And make no mistake, this is nothing but an attempt to transfer wealth to communities that have nationally ranked schools and multi-million-dollar rec centers and, exemplary city services and to further exacerbate all of the things that we work to combat every single day are, entrenched poverty, disinvestment, systemic racism, all of that. So I'm pretty confident that we're all on board here, but I think it's important to send a message down to Columbus to say that this is unacceptable for our residents, but it's also problematic for the entire region.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Tony Brancatelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I fully concur with the statements from my colleague, Councilman Slife. This would be truly a misjustice to our city, and we really need to stay focused on how we improve our urban markets and not how do we continue to degrade them through legislators who have feel comfortable continuing to pick our pockets and make ill-advised legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I without being repetitive, I would just say that urban cores across America are the ones that produce jobs and tax revenue for the community. The city of Cleveland and its suburbs are not mutually exclusive. The city core of Cleveland doing well helps the suburbs all around in Cuyahoga County and beyond. So this idea that we would take away from the job hub of the region, the largest job congregation of jobs in the state of Ohio, is shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, it's completely ill-advised. It has no basis in data or facts, and again, by attempting to weaken the city or the urban core, it's going to hurt the suburbs, no doubt about it. So it's just really ill-advised, and this would be the same thing throughout the country. A strong city of Cleveland, a strong urban core, a growing job center will help the suburbs as well. So I don't know what the sponsor of this legislation at the state level is thinking, but hopefully she sees the light and understands the basic economics of our region, and that is that a strong core helps everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Mike Plungic.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like to be added as a sponsor, Mr. Chairman, to my honorable colleagues. I think it's extremely troubling that we find this attack once again upon the urban areas. And as we've heard from my fellow colleagues, if you look at the state of Ohio, the revenue for the state of Ohio is generated. The biggest revenue producer is the urban areas. It's Cleveland, it's Columbus, it's Cincinnati, Dayton, Toledo, etc. Yet this constant attack upon the urban core and our economic viability, to me, is incredible. My question to the sponsor: do we have the sponsors at this point? Do we have any indication as to where the governor stands on this issue?
My understanding is that the governor is opposed to this. The governor supports the original COVID legislation, emergency legislation that was passed. But we're going to be monitoring this one very closely.
Okay, thank you very much. That's good to hear, because common sense has got to prevail here. This attack not only is going to devastate the city of Cleveland, because our greatest revenue producer is income tax, but every inner ring suburb around us is going to be a domino effect upon them. So if you're living in Euclid, Lakewood, Garfield Heights, Shaker, you are going to feel that tsunami of disinvestment. And it's amazing to me, again, this constant bunch. And I would hope, again, that our local state reps and state senators most certainly receive a copy of the resolution, and maybe even a letter from yourself, Mr. Chairman, indicating that we need to have a full court press of our local state officials up here against this legislation. It's stupidity at its best. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Blaine Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is, we ought to be incensed about this. This is one of the most egregious attacks that I've seen on this city. First, it started with residency requirements. Then it went to the local government fund. Now you want to take taxpayer dollars out of the city of Cleveland. At some point in time, somebody's going to have to send a clear message to Hudson and all these other places where this young lady is the representative, and make it clear to them that you can't run away from the urban core. This is what they're trying to promote, more urban sprawl. Everybody is not going to move to Hudson and Medina and Lake County and all these other places. So if you continue to try to eradicate and to erode the urban core, it eventually is going to come to your neighborhood. Look at the heroin epidemic. Everybody thought it was a city problem. It was a Black people's problem. It was a people of color problem in the inner city. And sometimes I think that as government, especially at the state level, it's not a matter of what is happening, it's a matter of who it's happening to. And now they're going to have to deal with the same problems of the urban core if they continue to try to promote this urban sprawl and we have this devastation that we have in the city. We've talked about roads, we talked about the importance of census, we've talked about all of these different issues that we fight every day. And this is yet another attack that tries to eradicate. So not only do we need to mobilize the other state officials, but we actually need to make the public aware of what kind of money grab these folks are trying to do. And Mr. Chairman, I'm telling you now, if they do this, I'm going to start to try to propose and look at ways and look at avenues that we can tax people who even drive into our cities. New York does it, and other people, that they actually start charging taxes to people for even coming into the city. So all I would tell you is that we got to start fighting fire with fire. This is one of the most egregious attacks that I've seen. And I think this entire council should be incensed that they're trying to do this. And I agree with Mike Polensek. It is not just the inner city. The inner ring suburbs is going to get hit just as hard. So I would like to be added as a co-sponsor to this. And I urge all of my colleagues to be very active in promoting our stance and our position on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Joe Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I happen to be outside due to the fact that we've lost power in our building. So I just want to thank Mr. Slight for his comments, as well as my colleagues. I want to join in this whole effort, but the issue is much deeper than this. As we have seen the aggressiveness of the Republican Party in gerrymandering. And so what you have is these extreme people, and some of them, quite frankly, seem to be bizarre and not in tune with reality. All they care about is their little areas. So I would, Mr. President, if we're going to really fight this, then we need to really have a fundamental piece dealing with gerrymandering, because our democracy here in the state of Ohio and all across the continental United States of America has been hijacked by the Republican Party through gerrymandering. And so they have been very effective, and they don't care anything about the city of Cleveland, even though the city of Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati are the engines of the state of Ohio, and they're the areas that are generating the most taxes. You have these conservative left, right wing extremists of that party that live in rural areas with populations of 100 people, having all of that power and telling cities what to do. So we really have to get serious about this, because they've attacked us on every front, and this is just another one. And Mr. President, I don't think that they will stop with their attacks. I think that they want to undo democracy and use democracy against democracy. And we're seeing that on a federal level with this president. And so I would just suggest, Mr. President, that we begin the process to have a fundamental plan, work together with the region leaders, and fight for what we need to have for our region here within Northeast Ohio, Cuyahoga County, and the other counties that are in this region. We need to partner with them to fight back. And so please add me, Mr. President, on this whole piece. I agree with my colleague, Blaine Griffin. This is egregious, and we have to do something about it now.
Thank you. I just an update on this particular bill. It's been introduced, but it hasn't been referred to committee. There's been no movement. My belief is this was just like a philosophical play to one's base, because if you think about it, this would be practically impossible. If you work in Lakewood and you live in Cleveland or Euclid, so you think you're going to parse the amount of time you spend in each municipality, send one check to your suburb, and then one, and what would it save you? $100 on a, depending on what suburb you live in, it might cost you more. So it's practically, to quote, which I don't do very often, Councilman Plenzik, it's just stupid. You know, we'll watch it very closely, but so far there has been no movement on it, but we're gonna watch it closely. So I want to thank the sponsors. Any objection to everybody being added as a sponsor? Ordinance number 68220 as amended will be considered by the full council in a few moments. We now have resolution 68520, Councilmember Kelly, an emergency resolution urging Secretary LaRose to immediately reverse his premature and unwarranted order banning off-site secure drop boxes for absentee ballots, and urging City of Cleveland Law Department to explore whether legal action to vindicate voting rights could be brought pursuant to the Federal Voter Rights Act, the Help America Vote Act, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution and the Ohio Constitution, and relevant statutes guaranteeing all citizens their precious right to vote. I sponsored this when it was clear that that this attempt to take the drop boxes out, and actually it's not on the text right now, but there are several co-sponsors that had emailed me, texted me. I know Councilwoman Cleveland, Councilman Griffin, Councilman Plenzik. You'll all be added this evening, but this is about the banning of the drop boxes, which the mayor had wrote a letter suggesting several locations, community locations for secure drop boxes. There's a time of COVID-19 where people don't want to go into a polling location to vote. They're concerned about it. But this decision would basically leave that one drop box at the Board of Elections. 30th is a two-lane street. The Euclid, the health line is on Euclid. It's not easy to get to, and it would leave the same amount for Cuyahoga County's 1.2 million people as Vinton County's 14,000. And this just really seemed like an attack on urban areas and just further making it more difficult and not easier to vote during COVID-19. So I would ask for comments and additional sponsorships, or if there's enough people that want to join, we can all sponsor. Okay. Councilman Mike Plenzik? You're on mute. If you could unmute yourself, Councilman.
I thought I did. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I certainly support the resolution. I don't understand it myself. I was thinking about this last night when I was writing an article for a local publication, to have just, as you indicated, to have just the Board of Elections. And we've all been trying to get to that site one way or another, and how hectic it can be to go in and do business at that site. So why not utilize the rec centers? Why not utilize police stations? I mean, there's ways this can be done to safeguard that most sacred ballot that we all cherish. So quite frankly, the Secretary of State, I would say I don't understand his motivation, but I really do understand his motivation. You're trying to make it very difficult to vote for people in this country. The attack on the U.S. Post Office, the attack on drop boxes, the whole effort to make it difficult to vote, where we used to, as we all remember, when you would return your ballot in a day, you didn't have to pay for the postage. Now it's a poll tax on your ballot because you got to pay to mail it back in. They're doing everything they can to make it difficult to vote. And we have to let it be known loud and clear that we are not going to tolerate that. We're not going to stand idly by as this attack on our voting rights. So again, I wholeheartedly support this effort, and I'm hoping, again, that some common sense is going to set in. And I hope the governor can lend his voice to saying that, you know what, let's do everything we can to facilitate voting in the state of Ohio. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Kerry McCormick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Please add me as a co-sponsor of this legislation. And as Councilman Plenzik said, yeah, I understand this very well. It's very clear to me what they're doing. From the president down, they are systematically removing the democratic right to vote in this country, which, I mean, it's an issue of drop boxes in Franklin Rose in the state of Ohio, but it's a part of a bigger picture of dismantling American democracy. I know that sounds, you know, kind of, I don't know, broad and kind of alarmist maybe, but I mean, I think if you piece all these things together, the rhetoric, the threats against mail-in voting, the banning drop boxes, even, you know, the issues with the census and, you know, for folks that are undocumented in this country, it's all a tactic and a campaign to silence people in this country, to even if they don't succeed, to put enough doubt, to muddy the waters enough to stop them from participating in their democracy. So even if the post office doesn't succeed in physically removing the first-class mail or otherwise, they've already won. This movement has already won because they have stoked enough fear and confusion in the system. So fully support this legislation. It's a shame. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Charles Slife.
Thank you, Mr. President. A suggestion, if we are going to be putting out a newsletter soon, per Councilman Polensik's suggestion, could we add information to remind people they can go online to track that their ballot or their vote by mail application has been received? There were a lot of instances in the primary where I was getting calls from residents just, you know, the day before the election and their ballot never arrived, and it's because there was some kind of clerical error at the BOE. And I think it's, you know, I put mine in the Dropbox. It took about a week for it to pop up in the system, but I know that it's there. So I think it'd be good to give people that peace of mind if we just walk them through that you can do that on the website.
Yeah, and I would say that you touched on something we should be aware of, is that even without what's the attack on the post office, even without this Dropbox issue, even without COVID-19, voting by mail was incredibly cumbersome before that. You know, you're having to get an application, download an application, mail that in, so that you were to, you know, to get a ballot, then mail that back in. It was like, you know, a 2 to 3 step process to vote, which is, you know, like I say, we shouldn't be doing this. So I appreciate everybody's support on this. I would just like to make one final comment, is that, you know, the state of Ohio has a horrible record with voter rights. We have a law that was challenged to the Supreme Court, and sadly, the Supreme Court upheld it. But basically, you can be purged if you don't vote for 4 years. And that's not uncommon if, you know, a lot of people only vote in presidential elections, and, you know, sometimes you miss those. So there was 182,000 names that were scrubbed for the upcoming ballot just this year. And the Justice Sotomayor wrote in her dissent, she noticed, you know, some of the testimony that in Cincinnati, it was in terms of who is scrubbed, in neighborhoods of diversity and color, 10% of those neighborhoods would have names scrubbed, as opposed to just under 4% in the suburbs surrounding Cincinnati. So it clearly has a disparate impact, and it's something that we should look at, how the state of Ohio treats voters in general. To me, this is just another step down that path. It's another step down this restrictive approach towards voting. So if there is no objection, does anybody object to being added as a sponsor to this? If so,
Chairman?
Councilman?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, my concern is if the opportunity, I mean, as was Laura's request suggested on doing postage paid ballots, I think that would resolve this issue.
It would resolve in terms of if people do that, but what if, you know, there's always going to be that day of, how do I get my ballot in? It's not going to get there in time. Will it be postmarked? There is no reason that there should be postage paid and places to drop off, because the drop boxes are contemplated as a way to provide safety to voters. It's a way to keep people out of crowded polling locations, be able to drive up in your car and drop it off.
But that's what a stamp does. You know, your ballot comes in the mail, you put it back out in the mail.
Yeah, that neither is the full answer. I think everything together is the answer. So I certainly hope that we get to a point where there's postage paid, but to me, that doesn't cure everything. That doesn't cure all of Ohio's efforts to prevent people from voting. So if there's nothing further, ordinance resolution 685 will be heard by the full council. Resolution 697-20, Councilmembers Kelly, Zone, and Johnson. An emergency resolution objecting to the order of the Ohio Power Siting Board in icebreaker case OPSB case number 16187 EIBGN to prohibit icebreakers turbines from rotating and producing electricity all night for 8 months out of the year, and strongly urging the Ohio Power Siting Board to grant icebreakers appeal in this case. I'm a sponsor of this. I encourage everybody to, if you're not well versed in this decision, it's something that everybody should be very well aware of. We're a partner with LeadCo with the offshore wind. We all talk about renewables. To summarize what happened, there was a poison pill that was put into the permit for this project that essentially made the project economically unfeasible. The term that was put in was negotiated out. It was agreed to by the issue was migratory birds, and the sponsor of this, or not a sponsor, but some dark money basically paid for people to intervene in this case because of their love of birds. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said this is not a major migratory pattern. The Ohio Power Siting Board negotiated this term out with concurrence from the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and everybody thought it was in a good place until it wasn't, until this poison pill restricting hours was reinserted. To me, it's one of those things where oftentimes we are well aware when those in Columbus will directly attack our home rule and direct attacks on the city of Cleveland, like when they went after Fannie Lewis law. We're all very well aware of that. This is a decision that didn't get that much attention, but it cost the city of Cleveland $250 million in economic activity per year, 500 jobs, and it basically stopped a renewable industry from moving forward. So, if we want to continue talking about environment, renewables, this decision should stand as a reminder that there are those moneyed interests that will always try to stand in the way. So at this point, I'd like to hear from the co-sponsors, Councilman Matt Zone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you pushing this resolution forward. I want to make it abundantly clear to those who are on the Zoom call and those who are listening. The Icebreaker project is not a threat to our environment. The environmental community is really excited about this opportunity. This technology has come a long way in terms of ensuring that migratory birds aren't impacted by this type of technology. Additionally, the bigger threat is the toxic emissions that comes out of coal-fired power plant. We used to have one in our backyard right there at East 72nd Street in the Shoreway. And for years that was spewing toxic chemicals into the air, and it was killing our natural environment. As we work towards building a more sustainable city and community, as Council President said, we were early partners with the LeadCo project. This project is going to produce 20 megawatts of energy. We've committed to purchase 5 of the megawatts. The county's purchased to acquire another tranche of that. We are obligated as a city by prior legislative actions of this council to comply with our advanced energy portfolio standard. This project goes a long way towards doing that. This is the right thing. As the Council President said, and I'll be a little more direct, there's the fossil fuel industry wants this project to fail, plain and simple. And so they're masquerading, throwing money around to try to influence it and disguise it and mask it as an environmental-led initiative. That's a false narrative. Just like we saw $60 million being dealt out to bail out nuclear power plants, this has the same feeling. So I appreciate this resolution. I hope the Power Siting Board will see fit and reverse its opinion on this. And I'd ask all my colleagues to support this resolution.
Thank you, Councilman. And there was a letter from our from 36 state lawmakers asking for reconsideration. I've been speaking with Dave Karpinski about the importance of this, but as important as this project is, in my opinion, this is basically dark money came in to insert this poison pill, and they had a compliant board that did it, and very few people know about it. But what we should know is that this cost us $250 million in economic activity. This cost us 500 jobs. This cost us our investment in LeadCo. And this is another example of how, money seems to be more important than things like renewable industry, jobs, creating local economy. So thank you, Councilman Zone. Councilman Johnson's a sponsor as well. Anything on this? Anything further, Councilman Johnson?
No, I don't have anything further. You explained it very well, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on Resolution 69720? Councilman Blaine Griffin?
Mr. Chairman, just a point of information, 500 jobs and $250 million over what period of time?
So the jobs were construction. 250 million is annual, as well as a $5 million annual revenue to the city of Cleveland and to Cleveland Public Power.
Okay, annual revenue.
Yes.
Okay, and is it my understanding also that I understand Councilman Zone who follows this, and I appreciate this. I actually asked him to elaborate on this because I really want to understand this a lot more. That part of this was to create the renewables to actually protect our lake too. Am I correct? So that we didn't have some other toxicity that go into the lake. Could anybody expound upon that a little bit?
Matt, let me start and then you can add on. Basically, wind is a replacement for coal. And by everything I have read or looked on this, the coal industry is what stopped this. So the main coal company is in bankruptcy currently. But anytime you use less coal, it is good for the lake because that's where that will end up is when you're burning coal. With this particular decision by the Power Siting Board, they are the board that makes the decisions of siting and permitting for this. And this term, what didn't come up out of nowhere, it was originally brought up, and it was a long negotiated period where LeadCo even decided that they would put on technology just to be sure to track migratory patterns and if there was any bird incidents with these windmills. So the real effect is that if this were to have worked, this is a small demonstration project, but if this were to have proven the concept, this would have set us up well to be a leader in renewable energy and in wind energy. And it could have been, we can't even calculate the jobs that it could have been if this concept proved successful.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, just two brief points to our colleague's question, Councilman Griffin. One on the environmental side and the other on the economics. On the environmental side, everyone has heard the term once in your life, acid rain. Acid rain develops when you have emissions from point source. Point source is typically coal plants, large steel mills that spew NOx, which is nitrogen oxide, back into the atmosphere. It materializes, it settles back down. Our lake was nearly dead in the 70s when Carl Stokes fought and took on to lead the creation of the EPA because of all the emissions that were coming back into our streams, rivers, and ultimately the lake. This technology is carbon free. There's no carbon, there's no NOx. And as the council president said, the supply chain that is within a 5-hour drive of Cleveland, you can touch 3/4 of the country. The local manufacturers, the tool and die companies. I have Advanced Manufacturing located at West 68th and Madison. They make turbines for the Cutter Wind Project. They've retooled the operation. The supply chain and the supply chain and manufacturing power and strength that we have within our region will create more jobs than the coal sector or the fossil fuel sector could ever do. By 2025, just in about 4 years, Amazon is going to be 100% carbon free because they're moving in this direction. So this is an important project. We can't let it fail. Coal wants this. The fossil fuel industry wants this to fail. And that's why we have to get it across the finish line. And I appreciate the sponsor of this legislation.
Mr. President, I would like to be a co-sponsor of this. And one of the things that I would just share with you, having the opportunity and the great privilege of being able to travel to Europe and other European countries, as well as the Middle East, wind energy is happening over there. When you go to Portugal, you go to some of these places, it's almost amazing that we're almost 20 years behind. So in addition to us losing jobs, if we're really trying to make Cleveland regionally, economically competitive, we have to have these kind of projects, because quite frankly, this puts us in the market to compete on a global scale. So I want everybody to understand that this is important. It's not just something to say, hey, this is just, you know, something that's just a passing fancy. I want everybody to understand that, you know, we, in any projects that we do, when we create jobs, it should always have a triple bottom line impact, which is social impact, which is why we're talking about equity and race and everything else, environmental, as well as economic. And I think that that's one of the reasons why this project is so important. So I appreciate the sponsors for supporting this, and I'd like to be added as a sponsor, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments on 69720? Hearing none, resolution 69720 will be considered by the full council. Resolution 69820, council members Griffin and McCormick, an emergency resolution recognizing the hard work and dedication of the SEIU Local 1 janitors in their fight for a livable wage, good health care, and safe working conditions, and supporting their right to earn $50 per hour under a fair contract. Councilman Griffin?
Mr. President, I'm going to ask if we could table that for right now, and with Councilman McCormick's support. I've talked with a lot of the stakeholders around this issue, and there's some things that we need to work on. So I'm going to ask if we could table it and then revisit this at our next council session.
Okay, this resolution 69820 will not be heard. We're going to withdraw it. That concludes the legislation. If there's nothing else for the good of the order, we'll take a break. We'll begin the council meeting at 10 minutes after 12. So if we could stay on this, don't hang up, just stay on this, turn your mic off, your camera off, and we're going to reconvene at 10 minutes after 12.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, I know we've spent a lot of time talking about the census and our resolution on the census. Just remind folks also that you don't need to fill out the paperwork. You don't have to wait till somebody comes knock on your door. There's a simple phone number to call in as well. So, you know, and you can call 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. this phone number to report your census. So it's as simple as that. So there's lots of other ways of contacting and registering where you live.
Okay. All right, thank you all. We are adjourned till 10 minutes after 12.
Mr. President, can you ask the council member, what is the phone number? I am preparing a letter to send out to my residents about this issue and concern. I do not know the phone number they can reach out to.
It's not Garfield 12323. The phone number for the census, just checking to see people's age. The phone number for the census is 844 330 2020.
Got you.
And that's 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 2 a.m.
7 days a week from what to what?
From 7 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Got you. Thanks, man. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
All right, thank you all.